In this daily drop, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on the Sony PMW FX9 being discontinued. So let's go. Okay, everybody, we are about 2.5 weeks away from NAB, at least 2025's version of NAB, and things are starting to heat up. I'm starting to get, as press, a lot of emails from companies about meeting at the show. And we're starting to see on newshooter.com, cined.com, and the like announcements for new products that are coming to market. Not big announcements, but definitely some things that are more in the accessories and lens category. And usually it's right before or at the show where we get the big drops, the stuff that we've been waiting for, the cameras and new equipment in different product categories, but the bigger stuff. So I'm excited. I always love this time of year. And one of the things that's happened is Sony has started to tease that they have new stuff coming to market. It does not specifically say, and per the title of this, that there is a replacement or a Mark II version of the FX9 coming out. But it's a little strange and a little unconventional for a camera company to discontinue one of their, I would say, most successful cameras in their product line and do that before a new camera is announced. So that's a little unusual. And if you take a look at the market right now, when we talk about corporate, small to no crew, in-house production, sort of the day in, day out bread and butter work that people are doing, people are using lots of different cameras right now. There are, of course, what we call mirrorless cameras. They're all mirrorless cameras, by the way. But when we talk about mirrorless cameras, we're sort of talking about that category that's small format cameras, more the size of what we were historically used to with DSLR cameras, though they're even smaller nowadays because they don't have to have that mirror, so on and so forth. And those cameras are still being used for lots and lots and lots of production. They do have their downsides. Primarily right now, I would say the big ones are no built-in ND and the lack of certain professional ports on the camera. All things that can be overcome, but are not as streamlined as using what the next category of camera is, which can run really, new from about the $5,000 price point to not the sky's the limit, but all the way up. And that's digital cinema cameras. So that can be cameras like the FX6, the C80, the C400, the FX9 before it was discontinued, and then moving up to things like the Burano and, Venice 2, the Alexa 35, Reds, all of that. And I just want to say there are amazing cameras in all of these different categories from different companies. Again, Red, Panasonic, Fuji, of course, Sony and Canon. There's just so many companies making really good cameras. Blackmagic Designs got some great stuff on the market. So from that standpoint, I think we're seeing a lot of choice. But when it comes down to it, in that corporate, in-house, small to no crew being the key one, I think there is, and it's happening in the higher end of production as well, but I think there is definitely a big consideration in making sure that the camera or cameras that you're investing in have a very good autofocus system. So I think that's one of the reasons that people will lean towards Sony and Canon primarily for a lot of that type of work that's being done in the market. As soon as you go into a camera system without a LiDAR system that is predominantly manual focus based, or that doesn't have a strong AF solution for autofocus, then I think you start to see those cameras being used in different applications, and generally with slightly larger or much larger crews, because you need somebody to pull focus, and you need just a different type of workflow for that kind of stuff, which is why, again, I think that Sony and Canon are the ones that many people lean towards. I'm getting the C80 and the C400 as my next A and B, well, the C400 and C80 as my next A and B cameras. And the FX9 and FX6, and to a lesser degree, to a lesser degree, the FX3, are cameras from Sony that lots of people are using in those environments as well. Amazing autofocus capabilities, obviously downsides to the FX3, because right now with the number of megapixels that camera has, you can shoot in 4K full frame, but as soon as you want to go to a crop sensor mode, a Super 35 mode, you are going down to 1080. So hopefully we'll see a higher megapixel version of that camera, a Mark II of the FX3. But here's really what my wish is. Even though the discontinuation of the FX9 is a little out of character for a camera company, many companies will come out with the Mark II, keep the Mark I, drop the price of it on the market. It probably means that we're going to be getting a camera from Sony in the relatively near future that is in that $5,000 to $10,000 price range. Well, the FX6, by the way, has also been on the market for a long time. The big difference is FX9 6K camera, FX6 4K camera, different sensors, different ratings in terms of ISOs and base ISOs, that kind of stuff. The FX6, oddly enough, is really kind of the low light king, and the FX9 is just an amazing all-arounder, right? But they don't share the same sensor. So my wish is, at least for the FX6 Mark II and the FX9 Mark II, if those two cameras come to market, is that they share the same sensor. I think that makes a lot of sense. Similarly to the C400 and the C80, and those two cameras sharing the same sensor, I'd like to see a similar offering from Sony. In an ideal world, we're seeing the same sensor for the FX3 Mark II, FX6 Mark II, FX9 Mark II. That makes a lot of sense to me, because a lot of people, once they're in an ecosystem in terms of camera, lenses, so on and so forth, they want all of their cameras to play nice with each other. And it's not now that people go out and buy two FX9s or two FX6s. It's very common for people to be buying one camera with a certain form factor and certain ergonomics, and then a second camera, a second and third camera with different form factors and ergonomics. So the idea of having an FX9 Mark II, FX6 Mark II, FX3 Mark II that all shared the same sensor, that to me is amazing. If they can figure out how to put VariND into an FX3 Mark II, then you're really talking. But there's other games that camera companies have to play, which is making sure that there's things that differentiate each of their cameras from each other. And of course, the FX9 has things that the FX6 doesn't have. The FX6 has things that the FX3 doesn't have. And that's somewhat intentional. But there are times where companies, especially companies like Sony, they shake it up and they sort of do things to that almost negates the rest of the market that they have in order to really push forward. And I've been using and have owned many Sony cameras over the years. EX1 was really the first one that I owned that was a workhorse, FS700, and I have shot more stuff than I can remember on the FS7 and the FS7 Mark II, and of course the FX6, FX9. Those are just workhorse cameras. So excited to see where Sony goes with the next iterations of these cameras, or if they're going to be creating just an entirely new camera. I have no idea. NAB's 2.5 weeks away. I'm excited to find out, hopefully, if there's new stuff before or at the show. Love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Don't forget to. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.